All right, everyone,
Oc-
welcome to
October
another
18th.
episode of Peanuts from the Plebs.
Woohoo!
Down one, plebeian, but we shall continue on. All right, so Jim, did you want to start off this week?
Yeah, I think this has been discussed a lot, but I think we'll just do our little take on it, maybe just talk about a little bit the whole issue with the censorship of the New York Post story around the Hunter Biden laptop hard drive information, which, if true, seems to indicate that Joe Biden has not been completely truthful when he says that there's been no dealings with for the sake of Hunter Biden's profit with China and Ukraine, etc. Um, I've seen some things that basically say people are saying it's, of course, Russian disinformation and all this kind of stuff. But I've seen a lot of things that are saying that, but Biden's lawyer actually requested the laptop back. And of course, you don't request a laptop back if you don't, not admitting essentially that it belongs to your client, right? So the big question that comes down to that I think around this, the most important thing is just the censorship that happened by Facebook and Twitter. I mean, there were all sorts of reports where Twitter was simply wouldn't let you even post the article. And their reasons for that changed. So that obviously they seem to be grasping for something that was coherent in trying to suppress information that was bad for one party and not the other. And at some point they did end up saying that, well, we're going to, relook at that. We're not going to be holding things back. That kind of coincided exactly with the FCC saying that they're going to look at it and basically say that they have questions about how this went down as well. A related thing is I thought it was strange that in those town halls that happened, I didn't expect Stephanopoulos to straight out ask Joe Biden about the corruption implications, but as the potential new president, I thought the censorship questions were completely valid to ask him. You could ask it in a way that says, look, without saying that this stuff is true, that the story was true, was it correct for Twitter and Facebook to completely lock down the story when there's been plenty of Trump things such as the taxes, et cetera, that were completely based on leaks and illegal leaks and so forth. And it was a completely different standard for that. So, my feeling is that it's once again just, it does give weight to the right's saying that a huge amount of the media and big tech is really playing for Biden's election. I think there's a lot to say that that's looking fairly like a valid argument at this point. And we really need to straighten out. I'm glad FCC is looking at it. We really need to have concrete standards and not allowing Twitter and Facebook to fly by the seat of their pants like this. They have to have very strict standards that are published and allow anyone to judge whether or not they're meeting those standards and not have it such an arbitrary situation. What's
I
your
mean,
take on all of that?
there's like so much to take on there. Okay,
Yeah. Pick
so
any aspect.
I know. All
I think
right,
the
so
censorship
okay,
is the most important.
right. So like the first thing is, so this has to do with the Burisma, him working at Burisma, right?
Yeah, but there's also some Chinese uh, entrepreneur bribing kind of things going on there, or whether or not Joe Biden made a contact on Hunter Biden's behalf that was talked about in email. Oh, nice to meet your dad, kind of thing, and all
Yeah.
that. So it's around Ukraine and China.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
Which of course that plays into what's going on now in the election, how everybody is like a China hawk, right?
Well, it also plays into the impeachment, because essentially the story is that the FBI had the original laptop. This guy at this repair shop made a copy. So the FBI was potentially sitting on information about that proved Hunter and Joe Biden corruption in the Ukraine, when the whole impeachment was about Trump asking about Ukraine to look into corruption. So
Well,
it
him
has
withholding aid, right?
it has amazing implications going off in 1,000 different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
So what this whole thing reminds me of, I want to take this on in two things, right? So one
Yeah.
is the aspect of that this is yet again, it's another Russiagate, right?
Right.
And it is another, but in the sense that what happened with Russiagate is that it was actually Hillary Clinton and the Dems that were working with these Russian, agents or
Sure.
whatever,
Yeah.
and they just projected it onto the
It,
Trump campaign, right?
it,
This is what
exactly.
they do all the time.
It was classic swift boating, like Kerry, right? So Kerry's strength was that he was a Vietnam vet, et cetera, like that. So they turned it into a weakness by getting these people to come out that said swift boating, by basically getting these people to come out to say, no, he's horrible at it. He was a terrible leader and all that stuff, right?
Right, right,
So that's exactly what they do. It's like deflect by pointing the same accusations at them. But
right, right.
absolutely.
It's
And the
almost like how
Russiagate thing, you can almost like instantly when they start talking about Russia on like Twitter and so forth, you can almost instantly dispel it by saying, "But Hunter's lawyers asked for this thing back. That it's not a plant if they asked for it back, right?"
I mean, you don't even need to go that far. You
Yeah, yeah.
have video proof of Joe Biden admitting that
Hmm.
he was holding aid
Right. I know it.
over over this investigation,
Right.
whether or not this prosecutor or whatever was going to be what is it, disbarred or something.
Right. Right. Right.
um and so we have the video proof of him actually
Yeah.
saying, like, boasting about this, you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it's like,
Exactly.
and the
And
fact
everyone
that,
laughing like this is the way the game is played. This is the
right.
power. This is the United States power moves that we do.
Well,
Yeah.
at the time when that video first came out,
Right.
at the time, because that was when this whole impeachment thing first started,
Hmm.
everyone was saying they were justifying it, right, or downplaying it by saying that the difference is that Trump is a president and he wasn't the president. Like, Biden wasn't the president at the time.
Hmm.
But you can tell that he was very confidently acting on the behalf of the US
He,
government.
exactly. He was acting on the behalf of Obama and the U.S. government.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's no covering that part. Like,
Yeah.
like all this stuff is just auxiliary information. It's just more information that is, well, I mean, apparently from what I'm seeing, there's lots of stuff that's being drudged up right now. And
Oh yeah.
supposedly this is being considered like the October surprise, right?
Right.
But the problem with this is that, much like how the whole Tara Reid thing, where has that gone? It went
Right.
nowhere. Why? Because the media, the mainstream media, especially left mainstream media, provides cover
Oh,
for these
absolutely.
people, and this is the time right now that we're in. As the election goes on,
Hmm.
this is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to have this information come out before, so that voters can make informed decisions as to who they want leading their country, right? And so it's like, the during the primary, you could tell this time around that a lot of it was the whole thing of that we need to come together, not attack each other, right? Don't
Hmm.
attack other Dems, just attack the right, or the opposition. That's what we're supposed to do. and
Right.
and that's what this whole election has done. It's just provided cover for the left, and especially for Joe Biden, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were selected from the beginning. They
Oh
were the
sure.
ones
Yeah.
who were always said to be the front runners.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This
Biden.
whole race was for them.
Yeah. Biden got like, I think it was 8.4% in New Hampshire and had to run out of there. Kamala Harris is is not one of the 7, I believe it is, that receive delegates. It's they're completely selected. Absolutely. Yeah. I did want to say, regarding your point about the media providing cover, first of all, the Dems shoot themselves in the foot again. They always should get this stuff out way ahead of time, and this stuff would be meaningless, the same as Hillary went through this with the emails and everything like that. You could have flushed stuff out a lot earlier, and it wouldn't have been that October surprise kind of thing. Regarding the media providing cover, I'm seeing all sorts of stuff about, there you've got pictures of Hunter Biden, sleeping with a crack pipe in his mouth and lie in a bed with us, in a bathtub with the same, all that kind of stuff. And all the messaging is like, and I kind of agree with it. Okay, the guy's got he's got issues, right? He's got problems with addiction, and don't go after him for that. Well, it's like that would be completely out the window if this was one of Trump's kids lying in bed with a crack pipe or whatever like that. Or if this stuff came out with them, the media would be ravenous to go after it. Yep. So I really hate being lectured by people that are saying this kind of stuff. Yes, generally that's true. You want to give people that have a substance abuse problems, you just want to give them help, and you want to give them love, and you want to help them to move on. But that rings really false in this case.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, it also it gives like this it humanizes Joe Biden, right? They're always trying to do that. They're always trying to humanize Joe Biden. Like, he's this guy from Scranton, he's Uncle Joe from Scranton, Yeah. And he loves to tout that. And he always just likes to say that he's just this regular person. And he's gone through so much because, his son died. And I think his was it a former wife or something? He's had a lot of loss in his life, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they're always trying to bring up with him. It is that humanizing aspect. And so this whole Joe Biden or Hunter Biden having a drug problem, like you're saying, very much, if it was one of Trump's kids, that would be it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how can you have this as your first family?
Exactly.
But because it's Joe, then it's like it humanizes this whole thing. And it really reminds me of how, back in like the 80s, when it was the crack epidemic that was going on in certain neighborhoods, especially predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods, right? But mostly poor Black and brown neighborhoods.
Sure.
That it wasn't a problem. It was a problem for the police to go after, right? But now, because more white people, and especially white affluent people, have become, they've started suffering the issues of these different addictions. Well, then now it's a substance abuse problem. And it's like watered down, it's flowery language, and now we have to help everyone.
Absolutely, that's the communication. The communication is, blacks and drugs equals crime, affluent whites and cocaine at parties that you probably shouldn't do is like, oh, you went overboard, you lost control, and it's not really your fault. Exactly. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And that's why when he's it really drove me crazy. I did watch one of the town halls where a young Black guy asked him something about essentially a what are you going to do for us kind of thing. What are you going to do for my community? And Joe just went on a tangent. He did I don't know, somehow he magically wove his way to something about my grandpa in a tenement building when I was coming up in whatever, New Jersey or whatever like that. It's just, he tries to make it hokey right off the bat.
Yeah.
And he didn't address the real obvious gorilla in the room of, you supported the crime bill and all this kind of stuff. And he tends to rewrite history. I mean, I just see him sitting there going like, well, what we ought to do is we ought to, like, without kind of coming around to talk about the fact that he's the one that's been doing things for 50 years. Why are you talking about what you ought to do? Why don't you talk about what you worked on because this is your life's work. It should be something you're proud of.
Right.
And he still
Right.
kind of,
Your record is
yeah,
what should speak for you, but his
he
record
can.
would speak very ill of him, right? And so
Right.
that's why he can't use that. But
Mm,
like what you were talking about with the censorship problem, so obviously that's something that we're seeing across the board, right,
right.
on all social media. And it's cracking down on not just this, but like on all different facets. So you remember a few weeks ago we talked about how Facebook and Twitter that the week before the election, they said that they were not going to be posting anything that, and they're going to ban anything that has to do with political posts, right?
Right.
Which, who is to determine what a
Ex-
political post is, right?
exactly right. Yeah.
And also this hurts not only like they're trying to make it so that it's targeted for the presidential campaign,
Mm,
really,
hmm.
but this hurts down ballot tickets as well. Like, what about people who aren't as well known and they need to get their information in local races? You know what I'm saying? And
So
they need
great
to get
point.
their information out there and they
That's a great
can't.
point. They don't have the budgets to get on the airwaves, et cetera, and they need that social media to get the message out there. Absolutely true.
Right, right.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then now I just saw that and obviously with this whole Hunter Biden thing, lots of channels and stuff, they've had their videos scrubbed, or they're supposedly they're going to have like another purge 3.0 or whatever,
Right.
where they're just going to get rid of different places, but they're already talking about how if you um say anything against vaccines, you're gonna be
Right.
they're gonna pull down your posts, or they're gonna pull down pages, right?
Right.
And then now Ajit Pai, I was just reading something where he promised that he is going to look at some section 230 or whatever, which addresses the First Amendment. And we already know how he attacked net neutrality, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he's going to attack the First Amendment
Hmm.
when it comes to like
So I'm
our
sorry, he's head of the FCC, right?
yes.
Okay, so folks might not all know that. And I thought I knew it. I wasn't absolutely sure that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
So this is getting really crazy,
right,
but of course it's much like the Julian Assange case, or just like how they banned certain pages like Alex Jones and all this stuff. They always do it under the guise of this is for you. We
right.
have to tell you what is right and wrong,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and what you can and cannot see,
Mm-hmm.
even though we are not communist China, supposedly, right?
Right, 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 right.
Supposedly, Pompeo and Trump were going after all of these apps, right, that the Chinese government has control over
Yeah,
because they are censoring certain apps and all this kind of stuff. But yet that's going on right here, but
yeah,
no one is looking at it because we're so busy distracted about all this other shit, and they
right.
put it in this box of, well, this is for your benefit, for the
Right.
greater
It's like
good.
the First Amendment has a big asterisk next to it that says we get to say what the proper context is, and it's a moving window depending on the local politics or like that. Yeah, yeah. I did want to say as well as we've been focusing on like Twitter and Facebook, but I think you did touch on like YouTube as well has been cracking down. From my perspective, Convo Couch, Fiorella, and Pasta have been like on fire, representative progressives lately. I mean,
Hmm.
the content has been fantastic, and YouTube like used as some excuse some video they put up like 3 months ago or something like that to say, oh no, that's actually your strike two. That so we're gonna be restricting you for a while, kind of thing. I mean, it's like really heinous stuff, right? So it's kind of like the opposite of the October surprise, right? The
Yeah.
October clamp down on effective communicators because they're terrified.
Right.
Uh, I had one other thing. I'll bring this up. You can cut this out if this
Okay.
doesn't flow well with the show. But I was thinking like a big concern this time supposedly is senior voters, because supposedly they were all really concerned about like COVID, right? That basically that they were really disappointed with the handling of COVID and it's affecting them at a greater degree. And I'm just wondering, if this view of Joe Biden's kids get out there with, them being crack addicts or whatever like that,
Mhm.
or they said maybe it was a meth pipe or something. How that plays to the senior people. How it's been.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have control of your family, or your family is that messed up, Joe. What's going on? I'm not sure that would sync right with mom and pop in Wisconsin or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you do have a lot of areas where you've had much like what's happening in California and New York right now, where so many people are leaving.
Mhm.
Obviously, what that does to the economy is it destroys it.
Right.
Of that local economy, where you lose jobs, you lose that revenue from taxes or whatever. So
And the
obviously, the
potential
cities
for
can't.
the potential for a death spiral is there once
Right,
you
right.
lose that
And
revenue.
what's
Yeah.
happened in a lot of these places is that you do have a lot of people, because there's nothing else to do, they end up, getting addicted to drugs, and
Right.
in that they is included alcohol and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like that can also play in his favor, because again it humanizes him, and it
Right.
makes it so that, oh, that's such a hard plight, for him to have a child. No one wants to see their child go through these things. And and a lot of people have that personal experience where they
Right.
have had that family member that is just really in a
Oh,
bad
sure.
place, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so it can connect, but it can also play the other hand, which is, it can show that he doesn't have that authoritative type of personality where he can like take control of his family, like he's totally lost control of everything.
Right.
Or like, why is his family so immoral? Or
Yeah.
it depends really.
Yeah. To your point, I have seen cases. For one that comes to mind is Emma. I always never don't know how to say her last name. Vigilant from
Vigilant, yeah.
TYT on Twitter. Like, I think the only thing she posted about this whole laptop thing was basically one email where essentially it was from Joe Biden to his son Hunter, basically saying, "Oh, don't worry, kid. I know you've had a tough time," and she went all over that. Oh, what a humanizing thing! I don't know what the Republicans have a problem with this content.
See,
It's like, really?
it's all PR, man. It's all
Yeah. Oh,
PR.
yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that these people are all, under contract under CAA, that talent agency,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
not by mistake either.
Yeah, I don't actually know if Emma is. I know that Anna and Jenkar, and of course
Mhm.
there was a $20 million cash infusion from Katzenberg, who is a major bundler and donor to Clinton and Obama's and all that.
Mhm.
But I haven't seen Emma listed under those, but I wouldn't doubt if I just didn't. Maybe there's some
Well,
sub, maybe there's
Emma
some
has
sub agency. I don't know.
like she has her own personal family ties to like Kirsten Gillibrand, and
Oh,
like
right, right.
apparently her family is like they've been mega donors to a lot of these Democratic apparatchiks or whatever.
Right.
So she's in it. She's in
Yeah.
the machine, just like the rest of TYT and a lot
I
of
was
these
trying
other
to figure
people.
at some point, I was trying to figure it was like specifically in October or November or something like year where last year, where Emma went specifically from Tulsi's great. She's the only one on talking about war issues, and she's the only to look all of a sudden like she's evil. And it wasn't just like she wasn't just talking content wise that
Mhm.
she's got a problem with Tulsa. You could see the anger in her face, and it's like something turned like on a dime there. And I would love to know what it was, but it's not. There's nothing as obvious as the Katzenberg money or anything like that, or becoming hired by one of these talent
Right.
agencies.
It's about access. It's all about
Yeah.
access for a lot of these people.
Oh, somehow she just got the message from some of her Kirsten
Right.
Gillibrand
And I'm
folks or something.
sure that TYT is not going to be talking about any sort of censorship or anything like that, like because
Yeah.
they're not being affected by it. For them, it's some sort of conspiracy theory that, smaller channels, they have to have something to complain about. So there you go.
Right, right, right.
That's how they chalk it up.
Yeah.
It always, whenever you bring up anything, it's always just that you're a sore loser and you,
Oh yeah.
it's not actually that there are concerns out there that are validated, that are
Right.
credible. No, no, no. Everything is always just that you're a sore loser and you just want to bitch about everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So,
I did get blocked by Anna, so I was proud of that.
I mean, that's a rite of passage there, I feel
Yeah, it
like.
was pretty good.
All right. So if we're ready to move on to the next story.
Sure.
Okay, so wanted to talk about the story that Ben Norton put out recently, and I'm gonna share my screen here. Um, so this piece, I have it on Consortium News, but it was actually written on the Gray Zone. But
Yep.
obviously, the Consortium News, it covers a lot of these pieces.
Mhm.
And so this was written on October 12th, 2020 by Ben Norton over at the Gray Zone. He's really great. They've done a lot of work showing what's going on in Syria. They've done a lot of work over in South America, showing like all the regime change transactions going on over there. But so what I want to do is I want to read like the first part of this, and then because then the rest of it goes into like the details. All right, so it says leaked documents show how UK government contractors developed an advanced infrastructure of propaganda to stimulate support in the West for Syria's political and armed opposition. Virtually every aspect of the Syrian opposition was cultivated and marketed by Western government-backed public relations firms, from their political narratives to their branding, from what they said to where they said it. The leaked files reveal how Western intelligence cutoffs played the media like a fiddle, carefully crafting English and Arabic language media coverage of the war on Syria to churn out a constant stream of pro opposition coverage. US and European contractors trained and advised Syrian opposition leaders at all levels, and young media activists to the heads of the parallel government in exile. These firms also organized interviews for Syrian opposition leaders on mainstream outlets such as BBC and UK's Channel 4. More than half of the stringers used by Al Jazeera in Syria were trained in a joint US UK government program called BASMA, which produced hundreds of Syrian opposition media activists. Western government PR firms not only influenced the way the media covered Syria, but as the leaked documents reveal, they produced their own propagandistic pseudo news for broadcast on major TV networks in the Middle East, including BBC Arabic, Al Jazeera, um, Al Arabiya, and Orient TV. These UK funded firms functioned as full time PR hacks for the extremist dominated Syrian armed opposition. One contractor called Incostrat said it was in constant contact with a network of more than 1,600 international journalists and influencers and used them to push pro opposition talking points. Another Western government contractor, ARK, crafted a strategy to rebrand Syria's Salafi jihadist armed opposition by softening its image. ARK boasted that it provided opposition propaganda that aired almost every day on major Arabic language TV networks. Virtually every major Western corporate media outlet was influenced by the UK government funded disinformation campaign exposed in the trove of leaked documents from the New York Times to the Washington Post, CNN to The Guardian, the BBC to BuzzFeed. The files confirm reporting by journalists, including the Grey Zone's Max Blumenthal, on the role of ARK, the US UK government contractor, in popularizing the white helmets in Western media. ARK ran the social media accounts of the White Helmets and helped turn the Western funded group into a key propaganda weapon of the Syrian opposition. The leaked documents consist mainly of material produced under the auspices of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. All of the firms named in the files were contracted by the British government, but many also were running multi-donor projects that received funding from the governments of the United States and other Western European countries. In addition to demonstrating the role these government intelligence cutouts played in playing media coverage, the documents shine light on the British government program to train and arm rebel groups in Syria. Other materials show how London and Western governments worked together to build a new police force in opposition controlled areas. Many of these Western backed opposition groups in Syria were extremist Salafi jihadists. Some of the UK government contractors whose activities were exposed in these leaked documents were in effect supporting Syrian Al Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al Nusra and its fanatical offshoots. Okay, it says it right here that
Yeah.
these leaked documents expose this. The
Mhm.
documents were obtained by a group calling itself Anonymous and were published under a series of files entitled Op HMG, Her Majesty's Government, Trojan Horse, from Integrity Initiative, to covert ops around the world. Part 1, Taming Syria. The unidentified leakers said they aimed to expose criminal activity of the UK's FCO and Secret Services, stating, "We declare war on the British neocolonialism." The Gray Zone was not able to independently verify the authenticity of the documents. However, the documents tracked closely with reporting on Western destabilization and propaganda operations in Syria by this outlet and many others, sorry. And as the Gray Zone reported in an update following initial publication of the story, the UK government told Middle East Eye that foreign office documents concerning the work of its contractors in Syria had been hacked and published online. So for anyone who is thinking that these documents are shit and that they can't be verified or whatever, because the Gray Zone is saying that they couldn't independently verify it, but the UK government told the Middle East Eye that they had been hacked and that the documents have been published online.
Mhm.
So that does give some sort of validity to this. And then
Mhm.
here is the link to the document. So I'll attach a link to all of this stuff.
Yeah. So again, it's like with the Hunter Biden situation, when his lawyer asks for the hard drives back, that kind of gives validity to the fact that there is something there, right? So same thing here, when basically they're getting in front of the story by saying, "Hey, we were hacked and the documents were taken." Yeah, these look like they're probably the actual documents.
Right.
Right.
And the thing with this story is that it just reveals how, first of all, that there is proof now that Western governments have been backing uh, rebel groups, right?
Hmm.
These
Right.
moderate rebel groups over in
Mhm.
Syria, right?
Right.
That these documents show how it was like a network of people that were working together. You can say a conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Of these Western governments that they contracted out these firms to essentially just do PR to manufacture consent
Hmm.
for regime change. That's literally what this whole thing just encompasses this. And again,
Yeah.
he goes through each
And
part of this. I just wanted to read like
sure.
that was the like a summary of what he wrote in this. Um, but they talk about how just this one ARK, that one firm, they got $2.3 million
Right.
for training activists how to and providing cameras and different things so that they could and they also provided them training on how to talk to media,
Right.
Western media, to present certain stories. So this has all been concocted, you know.
Right. And just I think you and I discussed briefly yesterday that, and it's corroborated by the fact of what happened with the OPCW, right? That
Right.
was kind of, these things are working together. They infiltrate the OPCW. They've shown that all sorts of Western governments have put pressure on the OPCW to move people around, etc., to concoct this whole chemical weapons used by that evil Assad kind of thing. They've basically shown that several cases, as you know, the fabulous Jimmy Dore and many other people have been saying, and Tulsi Gabbard said months ago, it didn't make sense. They've had at this point like 4 whistleblowers within the
Yeah.
OPCW basically saying this isn't accurate. The words that we had to describe our analysis on the ground were completely removed and replaced with these conspiracy government talking points, basically.
Right. And
Yeah,
really what this shows is that this shows how they do this so that you have, it's an appeal to authority. That's what this is, right? So obviously it talks about how the BBC, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, the Washington Post, these are really propaganda rags. That's what this is showing, that they are true propaganda rags for the government, okay? Where people, they go to these authoritative sources, really,
right,
right? Because they have the experts and they just have years of just putting out information that who knows if any of this information that they put out is actually real, or like we've
right.
been seeing here, it's all been manufactured and to
So,
bring out a certain narrative, you know.
so here's a little side question for you. I mean, my feeling is that in the United States, uh, of course, New York Times has been, giving reasons to go to war for CIA for a long time, but things have certainly escalated with Trump derangement syndrome at CNN and MSNBC and so forth. Is your feeling with BBC and the Guardian, et cetera, and European news sources, do you think this is a relatively new thing, the degree to which they're the mouthpiece for government propaganda, or is this probably always been there and we just haven't been aware? I mean, they've also been pushing war when the government wants it as well, I think.
So, and obviously this is just my opinion, but
Yeah, yeah,
I feel that these other news organizations, maybe when they first started off, it much like TYT, right? That they started off with a certain goal. They conjured up, or they garnered a certain support group, right? Because
right,
they were looking for, certain kinds of news they thought was independent, and not propaganda, essentially, right?
right,
But then these organizations, they get bought out, you know.
right,
And if you always have to look at who is behind these different organizations. I don't know who funds the Guardian and BBC and all this, but I do know that, like, for instance, I think it's Truth Dig or one of those that Chris Hedges, he was writing for, and I guess someone bought, like, some big donor
right,
bought this news organization, and they wanted them to write about certain things that they didn't want to write about, that they thought was like propaganda and stuff, and so they ended up, the whole staff left. they
right,
just they just ended up leaving, they
right,
walked out. And so I feel like, unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where these news anchors and all this kind of stuff, I think maybe for them, they do actually believe all this stuff because that is the information that they're being fed. They're not actually going out and investigating these things. They're literally just reading whatever the New York Times says. So it's a
sure,
big cycle. That's all they're
right.
doing. It's just a circle. It's like a circle jerk, essentially, of
Right. So
information.
I mean, that's a big point. There are the people that, the on-camera talent or whatever for MSNBC and CNN that to them, success means, they get to read the news or whatever is put in front of them on the most prestigious platform, right? So in their best time slot, etc. That is success for them. They don't care what they're reading, and they'll do
Right.
whatever they have to do. But
Rachel
it is
Maddow,
disappointing.
Russiagate.
But it is disappointing. Yeah, it is disappointing with things like NPR and things like that, where I think
Yes.
somebody essentially from the State Department went there, right? Is that what it was? Somebody like head of the State Department communications ended up going there, and now you can just see what's going on there. And even like, C-SPAN with that guy that was what was his name, that was gonna run the debate, that was talking to
Oh, I
Scaramucci.
did see that.
It's like
Yeah.
C-SPAN, give me a break, C-SPAN. Are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
don't want to have to worry about whether or not C-SPAN is just delivering me the news or not.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Luckily they usually just put a camera on the whatever event and let it run, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show how dangerous this all is, because it's not all malfeasance. It's just malfeasance really at the top, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's almost like ignorant malfeasance on the side of the people actually reporting these things on BBC and and New York
Right.
Times and all this, right? Because there have been this year there have been a couple of reporters, investigative reporters, that they've left their organizations because because they've been so pro war that they could
Yeah.
not deal anymore,
Right.
and if and it goes to show how in like immersed the military industrial complex is to our media. They are almost one, like
Sure.
essentially the media just is a PR firm for the military industrial complex. That's what it's come down to. And that's what this
Right.
shows, And you had how many times
Well,
was
for the
Tulsi,
for the intelligence and military and industrial complex, but that's often one. I mean, often the
right,
CIA. I mean, the CIA is generating wars for the military industrial complex, so it's
right.
basically one, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yep.
So, I mean, how many times did we see Tulsi go on these different shows and or even on the debate stage? Okay, Kamala Harris, right? That was her whole big comeback, right? Because she
Right.
had, instead of being able to defend her record that she's so proud of, right? And
Right.
what did she do? She went and did ad hominem attacks on Tulsi, calling her an Assad apologist. Okay,
Right.
how many times was she attacked over this on The View? She was attacked over this. I
Yeah.
mean, just everywhere she's been attacked over being an Assad apologist.
And
And look,
that's one of the most blatant examples too, because if you can look back and find video of Obama saying, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to any adversary. We have to talk to our adversaries to cause peace and create treaties," and it's just like, it's so childish.
right.
It's so silly to talk like that's a problem, to go on a congressional investigation with Dennis Kucinich and many others, and to talk to various sides and do the job that Congress is supposed to do, which is find the truth on the ground.
It's diplomacy. Her
It's
her job
diplomacy
was
101.
diplomacy.
Yeah, it's diplomacy 101. The
Right.
fact that she wasn't willing to take exactly the CIA talking points of what was happening there as the truth, and they went to find the truth for themselves, is exactly what her constituents and the American people should be expecting of Congress to do.
Right. And the
Yeah.
fact that that they went after her for wanting to know facts before acting,
Hmm.
right? And think about, because we haven't been doing that, because we've been led by these different propaganda rags,
Hmm.
right? On the situation that's going on there. What has happened? You've had hundreds of thousands of people die. You've had millions of people displaced. You've ruined a country, right?
Right.
I mean, the region is very unstable.
Well, so that's right. Stephen Kinzer had a recent article where he's saying, like, it's Libya is the gift that keeps giving. Basically, their local region now is having problems, and there's government, like a potential for civil war. I forget where it was, but like in a boundary country, because of this issues bubbling over to neighboring countries. Yeah, horrific.
Yeah. So I think, I think this is a really important piece. And I think the other part of this that I really wanted to talk about was that, now you have the BBC has launched an attack on Vanessa Beeley and Ava Bartlett. And this is Vanessa Beeley. She put her Twitter thread. This is Mark Italiano. I haven't really heard of this site before, but
Hmm.
they had Slow News Day, and Slow News Day, they cover a lot of Assange stuff. Um, but Steve Poikonen from Slow News Day, he was talking about this in this interview that he did with Vanessa Beeley, and in this Twitter thread, you can see how the BBC just attacks her, pretty much telling her that she's not a real journalist, and essentially what it comes down to is, I guess, that the BBC is doing some sort of documentary on the White Helmets, right? And they were asking for Vanessa Beeley to comment on things that she has said about the White Helmets, because she has exposed the White Helmets as just being a part of Al Qaeda. It's an Al Qaeda auxiliary, right?
Right, right.
But the White Helmets has been sold, and in that article by Ben Norton, he does talk about it. They have been sold, and they even didn't they win like some sort of like an Oscar or an Emmy Academy Award, like something like that. They
There
they
was a
won,
documentary, essentially. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Yep.
which was actually funded. It was done by ARK, this group that they
Right.
talk about in the leaks. Um, but that they she exposed them for being this Al Qaeda auxiliary, and they wanted her to essentially back it up, I guess, but she's already backed up all this information. She's shown all of the interviews that she's done with people, that she actually is on the ground. She's not reporting from somewhere else. Like, she is in the trenches, you know what I'm saying? And she's talking to the people over in Syria.
Hmm.
She's talking to leaders. So I mean, and ultimately they are saying that Vanessa Beeley has been the one putting out propaganda, I guess, against the White Helmets and against US and UK governments, which, doesn't that sound kind of like they're calling for the US and UK governments to go after her, which is exactly what they're doing to Julian Assange, because Julian Assange exposed the war crimes that were being committed by these Western governments, right? And essentially, that is what Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett have showed in that is happening in Syria. They've
Right.
exposed the war crimes being committed by these Western governments. So who's to say that they're not next? Like, how can the BBC be launching this sort of attack on someone when Julian Assange is being well, now the hearing is over, but he's trying to be extradited to the US for exposing the war crimes. So it's essentially, it would be the same thing, like
Right.
it just goes to, and I don't even know how much the BBC has talked about Julian Assange, but it just goes to show how the media, the mainstream media, they have their marching orders, and now their marching order is to now go against these people. It wouldn't surprise me if they went after Aaron Mate. You know what I'm saying,
Sure.
for what
Oh,
he's done. I mean, who's next? That's
I
the
mean, so
problem.
it's, yeah, it's absolutely true. If you're anti-war and too successful in your audience, in the audience and the reach you have, then absolutely it puts a huge target on your back. There's no doubt about it. Um, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that, just like the whole white helmets thing, it just kind of ties into the fact that this is a really well crafted, um, strategy on the parts of multiple governments in Syria to paint this whole false picture and narrative of what's going on, to control the media, to have these various actors that make it seem okay, the white helmets are the really good guys, sort of like that, and yes, there's these chemical attacks happening and these poor people that are dying, and um, it's a really excellent um, uh, a chance to learn how they work, basically. With this stuff getting exposed, people paying attention should watch for these same indicators in other regions,
Exactly.
though it's most likely going to continue to be centered on the Middle East for a while, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that, but it like really what this shows is that this storytelling that has been done by the mainstream media is
Mhm.
only allowed because people have plugged out. All they want is it's almost like the bird, the mama bird feeding the babies. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like they
Right.
want their news already masticated and like gone through all the bile and all that kind of stuff. They just
Right.
want you to like chuck it up and give it to them, and feed it to
Yeah.
them. That's it. That's all they want. If people were more involved, if they were more engaged, if they were actually looking and holding these organizations to account, then this wouldn't happen. Thankfully, we have these investigative journalists that they do expose what's going on,
Right.
but look at what's happening to the people that are exposing these things. And
Right.
if you aren't questioning, if this doesn't make you question everything, you should question everything that
Right.
comes from mainstream media and the government. That
Right.
this is what this proves, but
And
people unfortunately won't see that.
you bring up the point that ties in with our first topic, is basically um, so with the corruption in mainstream media, and how they've been propagandized to such an extreme extent, we are so dependent on what little facts slip through by these awesome folks on YouTube and Twitter, etc., that the fact that they would shut it down like that, this action they took over the New York Post article, really gives us reason to worry that they would just shut everything down if they had to. People have to be ready to jump to Rockfin
Mhm.
and Parlor, and whatever alternatives we possibly have out there, to keep the communication going, because it absolutely could happen. I can't say that if you know Biden were to win, that they wouldn't pull the strings to basically shut down communication, any kind of criticism of the government, any kind of anti-war um, criticism could particularly be completely shut down.
Well, and you know what, you bring that point that you're bringing up right there is so great, because what it shows is that the only like now they're calling for um things to be exposed because it's Trump.
Mhm.
But if the Biden administration comes in, people are definitely they're going to call for, they're going to want censorship. They're going to want for people to to not be able to hear more voices. Think about what happened with Alex Jones, and
Right.
what happened with a lot of these other who is it,
Well,
Stephen Crowder or whatever the fuck his
well,
name.
yeah. Think about how much did you hear about anti-war stuff during Bush, and how much did you hear about during Obama? Right. Even that was even before they had, I think, the complete control of media as they do now. Think about all the criticism Trump gets, but how many press availabilities does he do versus Obama? Obama went like a year or something without talking to anybody.
Mhm.
I don't even remember. Was he
And no
regular?
one and no one even cared. It
And
wasn't even
nobody
a big deal.
cared. Nobody cared. They'd just be fed their talking points from the press secretary, and that was good enough for them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Even when it came down to like Hillary Clinton's emails, it was always the whole like how I said, in previous weeks, they if you really look at the Julian Assange situation and you're thinking that it's right for him to be tortured the way that he's being tortured because he leaked some emails,
Right.
you're really fucked up, because you're not looking, what is the content of this email, of these emails? You don't care about what's said in the emails. You care about who exposed the emails.
Right.
That makes no sense.
Exactly.
That makes zero sense. Really,
Ex-
what you should be caring about is what's being said in these emails, you know?
Exactly. And the fact that you know, Hillary like never pushed back on it. You know, she never said, nobody ever said that these things weren't true. They simply said, you know, it's, and that's, I mean, Biden is going like one, and the Democrats are going one step further on that with this release stuff from Hunter. The New York Post stuff is, they're not even basically being asked about it when they do. I mean, one time Biden did, he just basically got mad at the guy and said, "Oh, it's a smear," and with no follow up at all. You know, it's either Russiagate or it's a smear, but they won't get into any details because they would get caught as soon as they start answering any question. Well, is this fact correct? Did you in fact go at this time? They can't answer any of
Well, I
that.
don't know that they would actually get follow-up questions, because think about, like, I think about the vice presidential debate, right?
Right,
And how the questions that were being asked to Kamala Harris, she was asked directly about what, or if, you know, her and Joe Biden have talked about if Joe isn't able to continue on or whatever, like, and she just completely skirted around that question. The same
right.
thing about packing the court, completely skirting around it, you
Oh,
know,
sure, yeah,
like that's just what they've been doing. And
yeah,
the fact that people don't see that they don't want to directly answer these questions, there's a
right.
reason why they're not answering these questions directly.
Right, and you're right. It does. It fell to, in those cases, Pence, and some cases vice versa. Kamala Harris had to tell Pence when he didn't answer questions. It kind of fell to them to, at the beginning of their next response, say, "Well, first I got to address what Kamala
Right.
didn't just answer." Right. Um, yeah, there's a real boldness to them not wanting to answer the pack in the court question. Um, and in the Boston Globe today, Michael Cohen just came out and said, "Hey, if Dems win, they have to pack they have to go ahead and add 4 more liberal
See?
judges, and they have
We
to do
have
this."
to.
Yeah,
We have to. You
literally
see
saying
how
we
people
have to do
call
it.
for these things. It's
Right.
so
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
People are so nuts. It's
Yeah.
like, it's really, they're living in bizarro world, you know.
Right.
And that's why people say that we really are living in George Orwell's 1984, because it's double speak. It's like what's black is white, what's, you know, what's up is down, what's
Oh, it's crazy.
it's the opposite. Everything that you should not be calling for.
Right.
And that's why, like, now the left is really being seen as the authoritarians. It's so crazy, but it's
Right.
really true how the left is really, they're calling for more censorship. They are calling for, you know, lockdowns. They are calling for mandates. They're calling, these are things that should not be called, but it's because the media tells you this is the right thing to do. And if you don't do this, then you're a bad person, or what's wrong with you? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's always
Well,
pitting us
I
against each
see
other like that.
almost all of it driven by Trump derangement syndrome. That it's so, you are so you know, excommunicated if you talk against the prevailing wisdom, you know, that Trump is Hitler. If you start from the premise that Trump is Hitler, it justifies anything. And that's where all this comes from. And people are they're afraid of saying something that might be perceived as being pro Trump, you know, like
Yeah.
even if it comes down to something as ridiculously normal as maybe we shouldn't change the nature of the Supreme Court so drastically by adding multiple justices to tip the balance, you know, because
Yeah.
within 2 decades we'll have 100 justices on the Supreme Court if this goes back and
Right.
forth, you know.
Right.
And to me, it all comes from Trump derangement syndrome, which I think was a purposeful um, uh, method by Democrats and by their media and so forth to allow them to take any action at all, essentially without questioning, without consequences, basically.
Right. Right.
I mean, if Trump is Hitler, right? It's that whole like, would you go in a time machine and go back and shoot Hitler, right, before he rose to power? If Trump is Hitler, it validates any kind of rigging of primaries. right? Any kind of having a impeachment, even if it's not justified, even if the FBI is holding information that is counter to that impeachment,
Hmm.
and it and rigging a general election, it validates that.
Yep.
Um, that's kind of where I think we're at.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
I totally agree with that. And I think that, um, I think that's one of the reasons why all the polling is totally off, because I think that a lot of people, much like in 2016, they are
mhm.
going to vote for Trump, but they're not going to admit it. They're not going to say it beforehand because they don't want the backlash from it.
So
And
another and related to that, another interesting thing is I think I've talked about this before. The Real Clear Politics has like a mega list of a meta list of the betting sites, and the betting sites in the past week have gone like 5 point swung towards Trump. It's now at like 60-40. Um, and they were accurate in 2016 as of the day of the election. They were like 97% chance Trump winning.
Mhm.
So basically what I say is when they actually have their money on the line, if the people setting the rates, um, percentages for betting get it wrong, they lose a whole bunch of money, right, in payouts. So basically, they consider everything in doing that, and politics is almost doesn't matter to them. It's basically all about what's the information coming out right now. And I
Mhm.
think this Biden stuff, the Hunter stuff, is absolutely hurting Biden.
but not to lose what we're talking about with this censorship thing,
Right.
and with the whole media thing.
Yep.
I think the bigger picture of this whole thing is that, much like the Trump derangement syndrome, these are just media manipulation tools. That's just a tool that they use for a certain outcome. But the bigger
Right.
picture is always that the media has shown itself to just be a PR. Like, it's not the third estate or the fourth estate anymore. It's
Right.
not. It's just running propaganda PR for governments. And anything that comes out from the media
Yep.
has to be scrutinized in that way, because if you think about this as, we have to look at it as the forest, not just the trees. Trump
Right.
derangement syndrome is a tree. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
The forest is that there is a master manipulation being done, right? And it's not to say that they're doing it with the purpose of, I think it's about power,
Right.
and the way that how do you control a mass?
Yep.
You control them by, first of all, dumbing them down. You censor the information that they get, right? You crack down on them, because it's not just a matter of, like, for a lot of these people that they've lost their channels or whatever, that's their money, like that's
Right.
their source of income. you
Right.
you
Shut them
really fuck
down.
them
Sure.
over,
Right.
when it comes to stuff like that. Or, again, how you have the whole thing with Julian Assange. I can't get over that, simply because Julian Assange is not a US citizen, and he is going to be tried in a US court for US laws.
Hmm.
That, if people do not see that, if they can do that to him, they can do that to you. They can do it to anyone.
Right.
If they're going back now and they are, if they're giving strikes to channels for stuff that they did months ago, that means that they're scrubbing certain things.
Sure.
And this whole thing with Hunter Biden, it's just another thing where now they'll probably look and see anybody who's posting anything about this. Well, then they have to shadow ban any of those videos. They're going to give them strikes. They're probably going to take down channels,
Hmm.
and it's just so that there's only certain information that gets filtered out to the people, and
Hmm.
that's the only acceptable information. And if we are going to allow for this to happen, that we only get acceptable information, then
Hmm.
we've lost already. That's it. We're done. There
Right.
there is no going forward.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I essentially I essentially have got to the point where I'm like, I think it's critical to essentially for the Dem Party to end as it currently exists. Now that could happen by, it could physically end. It could go by the way the Whigs, to be replaced with, I would believe, a more progressive would fill the vacuum. A more progressive party would fill the vacuum, um, or the people that are ancient and causing all the problems, the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, that they could essentially retire if they're thoroughly humiliated in this election for having, I mean, if you do analysis post this election and Biden will lose, it would be like the guy had 8% support coming out of New Hampshire, and Kamala Harris never had any support really in terms of delegates or proving herself. And the guy was, obviously had dementia through or some definitely age issues, age cognition issues. I don't know. It could just be that out of shame, they just fold up. They just say that's it. They're done. Rather, but who knows?
I know, but see, that's
critical
the
that
thing. It's
something.
like I don't know what the answer is, because just getting rid of all of these people, I think that we should just get rid of everybody in
Yeah,
in Congress. But
yeah,
if we don't have a checks and balances, it doesn't matter who comes in next, because they are also going to be susceptible to, whatever, corruption or whatever is going
but
on.
I'm not sure that they would immediately inherit what I see as this web of power that I think the DNC Dems essentially have right now. I think they essentially,
But I think you're tying that to the people, whereas
right,
I'm tying it to, there's a system, there is an infrastructure. That's the
right, right,
thing.
right,
There
right.
is an infrastructure set in place that allows for these things to happen.
So
And
you're
that's
you're almost
why
thinking that.
they get to the point they get
So
to.
you're thinking that if a real progressive, well-meaning party came into essentially replace the Dems, then the military-industrial complex CIA, which is pulling the strings of the media propaganda, would probably just switch over the Republicans. Whoever
They
comes
would
in,
infiltrate. They
yeah,
would
yeah,
infiltrate
they
in some
find the
sort of
right
way.
people. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because of
yeah,
the fact that we really don't have a checks and balances. We don't have,
yeah.
like, the fact that, the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial branch, they're all supposed to be even, but they're not, right?
Right,
It's very weighted in certain areas. And it's all because the majority of things happen in back rooms. If you look at even the big thing that happened with Nancy Pelosi, where she she went off on Wolf Blitzer, right?
oh man, that
um
was great.
where she kept saying, you don't know what is happening in these discussions, in these meetings, right?
Right,
You don't know. It's funny how these people who aren't in the room want to give an opinion. She kept saying that, right?
right,
And it's
right,
because we don't know what the hell is going on. There's a
right.
lot of shit that goes on that is set up this way. And the way that Wolf Blitzer was saying that she should just call the president and do all this stuff. The problem is that that's how they've set things up, is that the president, it does not need to be involved in these things. He has a representative who is involved. That's how they do it.
Right,
He sends a representative to go and try to broker out a deal or whatever between
yeah,
the two parties, right? It's just the same way as how, in the House, right? We can't get anything presented or, any traction behind certain bills. Why? Because if Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to bring it to the floor, well then Nancy Pelosi doesn't have to bring it to the floor. These are
exactly.
things. This is the system. It's
Right,
not Nancy Pelosi specifically. They're just
yeah,
taking advantage. The same thing with Mitch McConnell. Everything that he's doing now, it's all taking advantage of the system that they have already set up,
hmm,
right? And that they will continue to do. All you're going to do if you change the people is you're going to change the players. That's it. And
right,
maybe
right,
at
right,
first we'll get some people that really do have that drive to, work for the people and all this kind of stuff. Yes, but we're all human beings, and unfortunately,
yeah,
because human beings, we're fallible, we're corruptible,
right,
and that's just how it's going to work. So unless we have ways of making sure, of ensuring, holding people accountable, then
yeah,
that's not going to change. And no one's looking at how to hold people accountable, right?
hmm,
That's the problem.
hmm,
Everybody
hmm,
just looks at, no, we just need to change whoever it is. No, we need to look past that. We need to, I'm very much the type of person, like, even when I wanted to study medicine, I always looked at it as, I don't want to just treat a problem. I want
hmm,
to get to the root of the problem,
hmm,
right? And
Mhm.
that's how I look at it, that our government, it's malignant. It's like end stage, right? But
Right.
in order to be able to move on, we need to look at the systemic issues, not just the person. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. To say
Right.
it, I think she is super
Yeah.
corrupt, but she is not the problem. Just like
Yeah.
Trump
I agree.
wasn't the problem,
Yeah,
right?
most likely whoever. I mean, it's it's the lesson of AOC. I mean, I just had this complete feeling this is his breath of fresh air, and she started out doing everything right. When she reported on that the freshman conference where basically
Yeah.
they learn everything, and she live streamed it and all that. She's like, "There's nobody here from environmental resources. There's nobody here from. It's all corporations trying to lock us down." And then yeah, she got absorbed into the Borg.
Because
Um,
because she has to in order to
right.
play.
Yeah.
She has to, she wasn't going to be able, she would have been ousted the first, in her first election. She would have been ousted because
Sure.
and that's why she went and she ended up lining up with Nancy Pelosi, was because they started running, I think, like 11 people against her,
Yeah.
and they were well funded people, right? And so it was
But
just it was a much harder path for her.
if you really wanted to make a difference, though, wouldn't it be best to expose all that, even if it means you lose your seat, versus take a seat to do ill for the country, right?
Hey, I agree, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I always think that, it's very nice to say what you would do if you
Right.
were in the situation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
if you were in the situation, who knows what you would do?
Right. There's
Self
human
interest, self
pressures.
preservation
Yeah.
it overcomes everything the majority of the time. But
Right.
I was one that yes, I did like AOC, but I never jumped on that bandwagon because
Yeah.
I saw her for who she was. I saw how much popularity she was gaining, and that immediately it set off something to me. When
Yeah.
you see that so many people, you have so many, especially so many social justice people
Mm.
backing you,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's just like, no. And then it's just this whole like, yes, queen, and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
All of
Right.
that
Right.
turns me off bad, like real bad.
Yeah.
I start seeing that stuff, and I think to myself, like, no. Even how everybody talks about the squad now, that the squad is expanding and all this kind of. Listen, these people, the squad, they are not superhuman. They are not superheroes. They are just regular folk. And
Yeah.
guess what? They're not doing shit for you because
Yeah.
they
Just
haven't done shit.
you can search on Twitter or something by basically putting in their search term and then putting in open bracket from and then put the person's like tag. See how much these people are posting about free Assange. It's they're not.
Right.
They're not pushing. I mean, these critical final days, like you say, it ended, but of his trial, whatever, like that, extradition proceedings, um, they were not supporting him. So I just don't know what that says. It's heartbreaking.
Right.
We got to get on to legislation.
Yeah. All right. Also, did you want to do the little MPP talk or no?
No, I just say. So we were just talking about Assange and so forth, and MPP. I'm a little I'm quite disappointed. As I said, I think Convo Couch had been talking recently about the difference between progressives that are completely focused on Bernie issues, which I agree with completely. Medicare for all, and free college, things like that. And then there are the ones that also have the perspective of we have to free Assange and protect freedom of the press, and we have to be endless against endless wars, anti-war, and MPP is squarely falling under the first thing of like not seeming to care so much about freeing Assange and ending endless wars. And I also kind of feel like when I criticize them about that, there's that same old mentality that Dems have about don't have constructive discussions, but protect the team, protect the party, go after that person that's criticizing. And I think it's I don't know, it's is it just a necessary dynamic of parties that there will always be this team player rally around the flag aspect, and it's very depressing.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
don't
very
blame you.
disappointing.
I mean, that's why so many people have been so like skeptical about MPP and its
Right.
viability, because they think that it's just going to be like another Green Party or another Libertarian Party. You
Yeah.
know, my take has always been that I think that we need to move past the whole party thing and move towards building a coalition of, just we need to have like three pillars, right? So like civil liberties, um, I don't even know if you want to put like Medicare for all, because the problem with that is that you would have problems with libertarians and stuff, right? But like,
Yeah.
ending imperialism, which ending imperialism, that is like
That's
so
huge.
broad. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I feel
Right.
like that is a good pillar instead of just being anti-war.
Right.
Ending imperialism, because imperialism
Yes.
attacks capitalism. It attacks,
Right.
like all these different things, right?
And
Um,
I agree. Like civil liberties and privacy, that's all kind of one big pillar.
right, right.
I would say that the
Wait, wait.
Medicare for all.
I was
Med-
talking.
Go ahead.
All right, so yeah, so if we come under like this coalition, if we build this coalition where you can have your party, right, where in your party, that's where you're going to want your Medicare for all, or you're going
Yeah.
to, you're going to want more of your social justice warrior kind of stuff, or you're going to be more libertarian minded, or you're going to be more of an environmentalist, or like these are all things that ultimately they're like detailed things that they make us go against each other, but it's just our own beliefs, our own values, which you're allowed to have. That
Right.
individualism, right, is allowed. But
And
if you
it's
are
just your own
somebody,
in some cases it's your own priorities. Like I might
right,
absolutely agree with the environmentalism. It's not my focus as much as civil liberties and anti-war, but I agree with it.
right.
Yeah, often.
But then if we can come together, much like how Tulsi with these last couple bills that she came out and she's always tried to harness a bill that is bipartisan, or
Right.
not completely bipartisan, but that she has support on both ends, because she knows that just on one end it's not going to go anywhere. And that's how we need to be. We have the numbers, right?
Hmm.
Especially people that are not with the whole, they want to leave the whole left right paradigm where it's
Right.
Republican and Democrat. They want to leave that. If you have a mentality that's outside of that, which is a vast majority of us, well then that's it. That coalition is a winning coalition. But you can have your party. But if we have a coalition where you're endorsed by this coalition,
Right.
there you go.
Right.
And that's what MPP really
That's
should
huge.
strive for, if they're for the people, because the
Yeah.
people have very many different priorities that they want to achieve, right?
Yeah, and I agree that the experience of like MPP and the Green Party and Libertarians, all these people that have these certain things that they would be in line with, and they get distracted by these other concerns, absolutely validates what you're talking about with that kind of a coalition, I think.
Yeah. And I just feel like as if we keep coming up with all these parties, all it's going to do is fracture us even more. And then what's
Yeah.
going to happen is that even more people are going to be apathetic, right?
Right.
And B, they are going to be more, um it's going to be cemented more that the right, because the right always comes together. They put their differences aside. They don't care. Hello, they even came together on Trump. How many people hated Trump, but they said, you know what, we can't do this unless we're in power. And in order for us to have power, we have to come together. Our main goal is that we want what would be considered a more conservative government, right? Like that is
Right.
the goal that they're trying to achieve. And they knew that they were going to achieve that with Trump, and they weren't going to achieve that going against Trump and fighting Trump, right?
Well,
And
there are never Trumpers and so forth, but to a large degree, sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But the left is so like hunkered down on,
Yeah.
no, I can't ever work with this person, or I can't ever work with that person.
Spotted turtle. That's my number one issue.
Right. It's just
And
like,
it's a great issue. It's a great issue. But yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it shouldn't prevent us from doing these, as you say, these pillars, these absolutely fundamental things. And I was gonna say that the third pillar to me would be
yeah,
um, basic human right kind of things, which you could pull in a Medicare for all kind of thing, or the idea that everyone has some kind of right to reasonable health care, et cetera. But whatever, we don't have to get in the weeds. I agree with the premise that a coalition and allowing people to have their separate parties but come together to support really fundamental issues it would really change our politics for the better.
I mean, think about in our government now, we have caucuses, right? That is how things work. We congregate so that we can know, because we know that in larger numbers we can actually achieve something, but a singular person, unfortunately, will only get so much done.
And larger numbers with a focus,
right?
That's critical. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we got to get on the legislation.
So it can even be like getting money out of politics, because I feel like that's another thing. So money out of politics, ending imperialism, civil liberties. Bam. That's it.
Yeah, right.
You know,
that's right.
And everybody else can have all this other stuff that they want. But those three things, if you are down with that, you're part of the coalition.
Well, and also, it leads to those other things. It leads right, because with better government and more money available by ending imperialism, you're going to be able to solve those other things, right?
Exactly.
Suddenly suddenly Medicare for all becomes easy once you've got an extra few $1 trillion a year kicking around.
Right. I mean, if you're just trying to figure out how you're going to appropriate things, well, that it's really about reallocating the funds, right?
Yeah.
But all right, so then moving on to legislative week in review. Okay. All right, so for this week's legislative week in review, I did come across this resolution, which again, it's just a resolution. It's not calling for any sort of action or anything, but it says condemning Azerbaijan's military operation in Nagorno-Karabakh and denouncing Turkish interference in the conflict. So there is text along with this, and it's not too long. It's just what you see here. The resolution, it does state like certain things that have happened. So I guess certain actions that have been taken. And then it does say, you know, denounces Turkey's reported participation and escalation in the conflict and condemns Azerbaijan's continued aggressive military operations. And apparently the United States is a part of this group that had kind of brokered. It's supposed to make sure that, you know, they keep to their peace treaty that they had signed back in 2006. Okay. Just for a little bit more information on this, I will put the link for this. I recommend that people check out Kim Iverson's channel. She did like a 30-minute video where she kind of breaks it down. And she does put like the different sources that she has for her information, but she really does put it really simply.
Yeah, quick shout out, not to denigrate. We have a lot of great independent media folks out there, but Kim Iverson really seems to put in the extra effort to do her research before presenting sometimes. That's why you'll see she won't post something for a week and then all of a sudden she'll post something that's fairly amazing, you know?
Yeah. And I love it because she's anti-interventionist, just like us, right? Yeah. And she always looks at it from that viewpoint. And so it's not about, she never gives the whole paradigm of this good versus bad type of deal, because that is always how it's presented, as who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And that's not how the world works, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is the bill that came out like just a few days ago and already has 67 co-sponsors.
Yeah. All right. So this resolution came out on the 1st of October. It was introduced. Okay. So as you can see here, on the 9th, it was referred to the subcommittee on Europe, Eurasia, Energy, and the Environment. And then it has, 67 co-sponsors, which a lot of these people are considered progressive, right?
Right. Yeah, so we see Tulsi Gabbard is in there. Ilhan Omar.
Okay. All right. So here you can see, first of all, Jim McGovern, who is considered a progressive from Massachusetts, signed on to this, right? Ted Lieu is considered a progressive. Barbara Lee, who she was the only one who voted again, or spoke up against the Iraq War, right?
Hmm.
And Tulsi Gabbard, which
Hmm.
that was very disappointing to see her name on this. Ilhan Omar. Let's see who else. Ayanna Presley, also from Massachusetts. Um, let's see. I'm just trying to see if anybody else that we really like here. And Ro Khanna. Um, and so that was really disappointing to see her on this. Not so much because obviously this isn't calling for sanctions, this isn't calling for intervention, but this is condemning the actions of one side, right, of Azerbaijan, and talking and denouncing Turkey, right? And I just think that this is how we get in conflicts. Right now, we are totally not in this conflict, right? So we do give aid to Armenia and to Azerbaijan,
Hmm.
but we are not involved in this conflict like that. And I feel like this is step one, right? Where we are saying, oh, we think that what you're doing is bad. So then what's the next step? Sanctions. So then what's the next step?
Sure.
Intervention, right?
Yeah. I didn't do it on official channels. I just threw on Twitter, essentially posted out a question to Tulsi asking for if she has explanation of this vote and what she sees as being, you know, the likely following if there are any following actions as you're concerned about. So we'll see. But I know she's working for the National Guard for I think another months long stint. But
I
yeah,
mean,
I would
I think
absolutely
it'd
like.
be great if she were to actually, get back to you on this. I think that I think it's unfortunate that enough people aren't gonna ask her about this. And it's not,
Right.
I'm not like saying that she's an awful person because she signed on to this, but I think that um, she's normally someone who does not sign on to these types of resolutions. So it's interesting the fact that she did sign on to this, and so I would like to know her
Yeah, I mean,
reason.
I'd love to hear the anyone treat constituents as adults and give reasoning on bills like this.
Right, right, right,
This is what my thinking is.
right.
We're not going to escalate. We're not going to escalate to sanctions or whatever. Um, this is simply the analysis of what's happening in the region leads us to want to say we think there's a problem here, but yeah, exactly.
Right. And so, what I think is really important, because most people, if you even ask them where Armenia or Azerbaijan is, they wouldn't even know, right? And so, I wanted to pull up a map so that people can actually see, because I think it's important to see who the players are in
Mhm.
this area, right?
Right.
And so, in order for us to see, we have to go over here, right? This is Azerbaijan. Oh, okay. All right. So I guess I got to go this way. All right. So
There we
Azerbaijan
go.
is here
Yep.
and Armenia is here. So let's see. Who is this? Oh, look at that. Iran.
Hmm.
Iran. And Turkey is right here.
Hmm.
And Israel is over here, right? And who
So
what does this say? What does this say? Oh, it says Russia right here.
yeah. So the region, are we talking about like a central region between Armenia and Azerbaijan, or
So
thank you,
this,
thank you.
I
Nice.
got you.
That's awesome.
All right. So this is the disputed area right here, this Nagorno-Karabakh. Right. And so the problem is, obviously this is Armenia over here.
Right.
And then this area right here is Azerbaijan. And this area is Azerbaijan. But then this area over here is Armenian controlled,
Got it.
and this area over here is Azerbaijani controlled. And the problem is that in Armenia, this area right here, it's mostly Armenian people that live here, right? But it's, I guess, controlled by Azerbaijan. And so
Oh,
they're
interesting.
trying to take this area You know, like I said, Kim really breaks it down really well about what's going on. I don't want to, because we're like short on time or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. Let's refer folks to watch Kim Iverson's discussion on this.
But this what this is essentially, it's a land grab. And the fact that you have Turkey over here, who supposedly wants to create another Ottoman Empire, and Russia being allies with Armenia, but also Turkey is a NATO country, and Russia is like trying to broker, deals with Turkey, and also trying to help with the situation with Iran.
Right.
And and so that's why I think it's really important that the US stays out of this, because
Right.
this is a really good reason for the US to all of a sudden get involved in this area. And now look at where it's at in relation to Russia and Iran.
Right. And obviously, a big political factor is the whole idea of recognizing the Armenian genocide.
Right.
Right. I mean, that pushes people in the direction of, poor Armenia is being taken over, being attacked again, kind of thing, which can or cannot be, I don't know, a correct explanation of what's going on there.
Well, the thing is that again, nothing is ever black and white. It's
Sure.
never. It's always in the gray zone, right?
Right.
Like the gray zone.
Right.
Because Armenia, they're the ones who, and again, if you watch Kim's video, she talks about how Armenia they weren't holding up their end of the ceasefire, that was
Right.
brokered
Okay.
by Russia,
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so again, there's no one innocent in
Yeah.
this situation, just like there's
Until-
no one innocent in Syria, and there's no, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
none of
Until-
these things.
Well, until the propaganda machine
Yeah.
gives us something as obvious as the white helmets. Oh, those are the good guys that are going in and rescuing people.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll see how the media spins this.
Yeah.
But the fact that we already have so many lawmakers over in the US who are willing to go and condemn one country in this, I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set with this situation.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
And then the other story that I wanted to do was about how Nancy Pelosi wanted to revisit the 25th Amendment to
Yes.
Talk about the capacity of the president. So this was introduced on the 9th. On the 9th it was introduced to the House by Jamie Raskin. And it's HR 8548 to establish the Commission on Presidential Capacity to discharge the powers and duties of the office and for other purposes, which, there's, I guess, conspiracies theories going out there, right, as to why this might happen. And it could serve twofold, right? That if this does, well, first of all, a lot of people are saying that this is just for show, right? That this isn't actually going to go anywhere.
Well, and it would be for show in that it's like who is it, Savannah Guthrie that on the town hall with Trump. It's like if you keep you keep asking them, why do you beat your wife? Why do you beat your wife? Why COVID's bad. QAnon, they bring up all these things for bad associations. Well, this is another thing like to make people think like, oh, they're bringing it up because, Trump isn't able to be president because he's got, mental issues, just to have that association.
Especially after him testing positive for COVID, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then there's the side where, yes, they can finally figure out a way to get rid of Trump, right? If they can't impeach him and they can't do all this stuff, well, then maybe they can get rid of him this way. Sure. But then there's also the other side that this would be a really good way to bring in Kamala if Biden does win. Then this is a really easy way to transition Biden out and just bring in Kamala, and all under the guise of, you see, this, we were thinking about this before the election, before this happened. We didn't just think of this, you know.
I mean, a lot of people are thinking it's that, because otherwise it becomes a fairly messy thing potentially. if you don't have something set in place. Well, I don't know, actually. I mean, I've always assumed that Biden doesn't really want to. He's kind of doing what he thinks is his duty to play that stable old white guy, that's palatable to the country or something, and that he really doesn't want to be president for anything in more than in name for a year or two.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's
and
definitely just like a milestone for him, like an
yeah, and
accomplishment.
and whether or not he would just would be just completely willing, can he just resign the presidency rather than go through this 25th Amendment thing? I don't know. Uh,
Right.
I I assume he could just kind of resign it as well.
Right. And then
Yeah.
there's also the other thing that this is like another way for Nancy Pelosi to be able to be president if they
Oh,
if
jeez,
they
yeah,
think that, no one's able to serve. But
yeah.
anyway, so again, this was introduced on the 9th, and I just wanted to show that this has 38 sponsors. So this was introduced on the 9th.
Hmm.
It is the 18th. So 9 days ago, okay?
Hmm.
And if you look at all the other bills, essentially, that or resolutions that have been introduced in this past week or in the week prior, you'll see maybe some people will get one or two co-sponsors. How many people signed up for to sponsor Tulsi's bills, to
Right, nobody.
against the Espionage Act and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah,
like, you know, very, very little support for that. But 38 co-sponsors for this stupidity, right?
right.
Um, and when you have Jerry Nadler on here, definitely it's a good one. But Pramila Jayapal, who, I mean, anybody who is calling themselves a progressive and who thinks that she is a progressive, because of her whole Medicare for all shit,
Uh-huh.
wake up, dude, because she tends to go with whatever Mama Bear wants. That's what Mama Bear is gonna get.
Right.
At least that's what I've been seeing. Again, Ted Lieu is on here. James McGovern again. So even though he met with people from the MPP, right? That he wanted to do a town hall or whatever, and he's so
Hmm.
progressive, blah blah blah. Well, look at all the stuff he keeps signing up on, right?
Mm.
Um, let's see who else. Oh, and when I saw this, I was like, okay, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Oh man, I can't believe she's still around.
Okay, so if you didn't need anything else, then Debbie Wasserman Schultz being on
Oh
there is
Lord.
enough. But to contrast that, just so that people see, okay, the priorities of our legislature, um, Justin Amash also introduced on the 9th
Hmm.
HR 8549, which says to prohibit the retention of incidentally acquired communications in the course of intelligence collection agents activities. Which, who wouldn't want this? Who wouldn't support this?
Hmm.
Let's see. Hmm. Oh, oh, look at that. No co-sponsors. None. So,
Yeah, just looking. The Julian Assange legislation to stop charges and attempts to extradite has one co-sponsor at this point, Thomas Massey, the guy that voted loudly against the it was a
the CARES Act.
CARES Act. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So we keep being presented all this evidence that our legislature is corrupt, that they are not working for the people. Even though Nancy Pelosi said it so many times when to Wolf Blitzer, we represent the people. We know the people.
Yeah.
We
We
represent.
we feed
We
them.
feed them. We feed
Yeah.
them. Well, you obviously do not feed them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man,
You're
Convo Coach Pasta and Fiorello were fantastic on that. They're saying like, you don't feed them. We know the people that go out every day and feed these people. The people that are under bridges all across California. They
yeah.
were irate about that, and
Yep.
reasonably so.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how much more proof people need that it's not working. The system is
Yeah.
not, well, it is working, but for
For the
certain
wrong
people.
people.
Right,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. It's not
yeah.
working for the majority of the people.
Right.
But in order for that to change, we have to check in. We have to plug back in. We are so plugged out right now. You know, we're just like, nope, I don't want to deal with it. You know, I just have so much shit on my plate. There's just my everyday problems are just too much to deal with. I don't want to deal with. But that is exactly how they want it. They have set up this system exactly that way so that you are so distracted by everything that's going on that they can do everything in the back room in cigar filled back rooms, right?
Right.
And you
Right.
would be none the wiser.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It plays right into Pelosi saying, "You don't know what's going on." You know, it's because you're right. They don't want us to know what's going on. They don't want us to know how the stuff really works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, with that happy note, like always on a happy note that we end
Yeah.
the show.
Cool.
All
All right.
right. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you all have a great week. See you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye bye.